everyone and welcome. Thank you for joining, where in this video we're revisiting the Lament. Now, it was brought to my attention by a viewer that not only does sword energy have no impact on the damage inflicted by the Lament's heavy attack combo, but you also don't need full sword energy to use that heavy attack and therefore proc Banshee's Wail. A link was included in the comment to a video, so I'll put that in the description down below. So there are two things being looked at in this video, that being sustained DPS with this newfound knowledge and also burst DPS, as there seems to be some misunderstanding over the best combination for the latter. Just to confirm though, I'm not going to be breaking down damage numbers as that's already been covered. This is just to show new DPS numbers with adjustments to timings. So starting with sustained DPS. Now for those that watched my first video testing the Lament, then you'll already know that sword energy doesn't affect damage, which can be seen from this table taken from that first video. You can see that heavy attack damage remains the same for both the 3 lights plus a heavy combo and the 4 lights plus a heavy combo. So this demonstrates that sword energy doesn't affect damage, otherwise for the 4 lights plus a heavy combo, the heavy attack damage would be less. But what I wasn't aware of is that you don't need full sword energy to then guard and reproc Banshee's Wail. So where the number of normal light attacks required in between the heavy combos was first thought to be 10 without Lucent Blade, it turns out it's more like 3. So we already know 3 guarded light attacks plus a heavy is the best for DPS in isolation. But to make sure 3 normal attacks in between those heavy combos is the absolute minimum, I'm going to first test with 2 normal light attacks. So here's some footage showing that, starting with no shield energy to make sure it's not possible, and which you can see it isn't. Sword energy hasn't charged enough and therefore fully depleted before I'm able to execute the 3 guarded light attacks in a heavy combo. But when you do 3 normal attacks, sword energy is regenerated enough to allow this, demonstrated on screen as well now. When I was originally testing the Lament, the biggest single thing that was reducing DPS was the belief that 10 light attacks were required between each heavy combo, but now we know that's not the case, which changes things by quite a lot. So, what does this actually mean for the Lament DPS? Well, before I show that compared to other swords, I also recently discovered that if you hold down the run forward button when transitioning from normal attacks to guarding, it happens quicker. Without holding down the run forward button, that time came in around 1.2 seconds, but if you push the run forward button down, the time it takes to go from normal light attacks to guarding comes in around 0.72 seconds. So that's a half-second reduction nearly, as demonstrated on screen now, with the run forward being pressed on the left, but not on the right. This also makes a huge difference to sustained DPS. So with those 2 things covered, how does this affect it? Coming onto the screen now is the same graph from my first video, including the original Lament numbers. Remember, I've taken everything as close as I could to 30 seconds and I've always finished on a heavy attack for all swords. So for this new method of using the Lament, total damage came in at 1,450,002 over a time period of 28.78 seconds. This brings DPS to 50,382, the highest of any single weapon tested, only falling behind double slugs with Anarchy. Clearly, this more than justifies its exotic slots usage, not forgetting that it will be healing you throughout a lot of this, and with Banshee's Wail procced, it can stun barrier champions. Now I also said I wanted to take a look at this when it comes to burst DPS as well. So there's not really any specific time that's universal for all weapons where you transition from burst DPS to sustained DPS. For me personally, I consider it to be when you start repeating yourself. For example, with a normal non-sword weapon, that's typically after emptying the first magazine. Once you reload and start firing from the second magazine, that's when I start thinking of it as more like sustained DPS, and of course anything after that. This is regardless of magazine size and weapon, so it could be a heavy grenade launcher with 7 in the mag, or something like Heritage with Reconstruction where you can hold 14 or more in the mag. In the case of the Lament, since you should start any DPS phase with a heavy combo, everything up to the second heavy combo I consider to be burst DPS. But once you start on your second heavy combo, I'd say you're then starting to transition over to something that should be considered more like sustained DPS, which for the Lament is anywhere from 3.5 seconds to just under 5, depending on how many guarded light attacks you do in that heavy combo. So, what we're going to look at now is the Lament damage over the first 4 to 5 seconds, and that being for all heavy combos possible. So 1 guarded light attack and a heavy, up to 5 guarded light attacks and a heavy with everything in between. I did try to do 6 followed by a heavy, but there doesn't appear to be enough sword energy. After each, I've then just tested with 3 normal light attacks. So, the graph coming onto the screen now is showing just 1 guarded light attack followed by a heavy with 3 normal light attacks, the short 0.72 second delay before guarding again, and then another combo. The second combo was there just to get it close to 5 seconds. Now to add a little context, 2 guarded light attacks plus a heavy, followed by 3 normal light attacks, that short transition delay, and then a second combo, which is also there just to get it up to 5 seconds. Clearly, it's the better option for burst DPS. But what about 3 guarded light attacks and a heavy? The better choice for sustained DPS and the one I hear people recommend to use every time, regardless of the situation. Well, as expected, you can see that it's better than the first 2 options so far, at any given point. And I've followed the same pattern as those first 2, that being a combo, 3 normal light attacks, the delay, and finally a second combo. But now it's 4 guarded light attacks and a heavy. And while it has lower DPS than 3 and a heavy, which can be seen at the start where the line climbs more slowly, but it then overtakes. I've only shown 3 normal light attacks after the combo, but if you just carried on swinging normally, it would be ahead of everything so far until around 5 seconds. Now I did do some quick testing, and 3 normal light attacks will not allow sword energy to regenerate enough to repeat this heavy attack cycle, so for that reason, plus the fact it's already past 4 seconds, is why I've just stopped it where it is. And now let's look at what 5 guarded light attacks and a heavy look like. And we have a new winner, if the time that you're doing burst DPS over is between 3 and 5 seconds. So where's this relevant? Of course, champions and powerful mages, particularly in more difficult content, but the obvious one? Aatrox. Unless you have a team of 6, all using Eyes of Tomorrow or something, the Lament is often the go-to choice for this encounter in a Deepstone Crypt raid. And it's this encounter that prompted me to take a look at burst DPS, as I'm always seeing people claim that 3 lights and a heavy is the best method to use, but in that short period of time where you can do damage, it doesn't look like it is. I don't know the exact time window we have to do damage, but I do know at a minimum it's enough for 4 guarded light attacks and a heavy, so quite possibly 5, although I haven't tried the latter yet. Remembering, a lot of the time people do this encounter, me included, you just do your heavy combo and then stop. Now, when I first seen all these together on the graph, it got me thinking, is there a better way to do a sustained DPS? So, back to the main graph now, while we take a look at what happens if we start a damage phase with 5 guarded light attacks plus a heavy, and then fall into the usual routine of 3 normal attacks, followed by the 3 guarded and a heavy combo. And they're actually surprisingly similar. The new cycle on the graph actually has ever so slightly higher DPS, coming in at 50,505, which is based on 1,503,036 damage over 29.76 seconds. But because they're so close and the times for both aren't exactly the same, you may as well just consider them identical. I haven't tested while starting with 4 guarded light attacks and a heavy, as I suspect we'll just have a similar outcome. So to sum up this short video, the Lament, after all, is the best sword for sustained DPS, at least on their own, and the single best weapon for sustained DPS, coming in with the second highest number I've ever tested, only being beaten by Double Slugs and Anarchy. It's a clear winner in this test, outdoing everything, and the best combo for sustained DPS is to start with anywhere from 3 to 5 guarded light attacks and a heavy, then fall into the cycle of 3 normal swing attacks, then 3 guarded light attacks followed by a heavy. Remember, more than 3 normal light attacks are required in between heavy combos if you were to use 4 or 5 lights and a heavy, which is why I recommend sticking to the 3 light attacks and a heavy for any kind of sustained DPS. For burst DPS, although it depends on the enemy and the time available, I consider using the guarded combo of 5 lights and a heavy rather than 3, particularly against Aatrox, where I'd recommend a minimum of 4 guarded light attacks, 5 if there's enough time to do that. Now I do finally have the quest, so I plan on another sword video taking a look at that. I'll include Black Talon, and I think I might include Lucent Blade as well. And that's actually all from me. I don't think I've got it in me to say X number of light attacks followed by a heavy combo anymore, so I hope you enjoyed the video and found it interesting and helpful. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, and give me any feedback in the comments. As always, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.